Okay, so let's get started on VOLTHA, and then see where we are at with the status of VOLTHA, and then we'll go over the adapter sprint, the support branch for VOLTHA, and then as part of the adapter, we'll have a quick chat on kind of when we're planning to release this. And then Chip had wanted to discuss Vol 400 also. So let's bring up VOLTHA, and then we can go through that. Okay, I'm going to minimize this. And we'll go through the sprints. Okay, we'll start with VOLTHA just because it's a little bit easier. So from a feature standpoint, I think there was a question out as to whether this was done. And so, Sergio, did you catch up with David? Is Sergio on?
It doesn't seem to be on yet.
Okay, so we'll follow up in a bit. So this is an open item, and then DHCP and IGMP flow should be provisioned only after radius authentication. Implementation, testing is done, code up for review. Amit, any update?
Amit is not going to be on, but I think the status on that, he said it was waiting for, it was up for review and waiting for approval.
I thought Jonah was going to approve it.
That may have happened. I haven't checked on that status yet.
Okay. Okay, let's see if we can get an update on that, because those are two open items. We can create a support branch, but what that means is they're going to have to push it to the support branch and cherry pick it to master. I thought this one was done. Do we have any updates from Sarisha? So work done, waiting on code review to close out defect was the last comment we had. Okay. So no updates. So that's an open defect. Understanding was that it's done. And then now, okay, so this one was done. Okay, so done, tested, and then Sean had sent Jono a note to merge the code. Do we have any updates from Emmett?
No, Amit's not on the call, unfortunately. He's out sick. So
Okay.
We just need to collect some status on that and report back.
Okay, so we're there, and then this one I think was in the same boat. So we'll do the same. Okay, and then this one was a opportunistic. So, and I haven't seen an update, so we won't worry about that one. I have not seen any new defects or are aware of any other ones? Are there any other issues that we need to touch on for Cord? I mean, for Volta? So it looks like we have a few things that aren't merged yet. I think this is a problem because we're trying to get a support branch. Our timeline was to try to get a support branch today, try to do an RC tomorrow, and then probably cut a release Wednesday. I think the timeline I'm running against is, I think David wasn't going to be back until the 30th, was what Sergio said last time. And so can we cut a release without these things? Or can anyone confirm that this code is in? Because if we can confirm that the code is in, we can get the support branch created.
There are a couple of them Jono need to review, right? And or just commit it.
Yes, and I think we need to just check and see if those are already merged. Jono's on PTO this week. David is on PTO. Amit, it sounds like he's sick, and so I think we need some independent validation that these changes are in. Because if Amit is sick, then I think, right, I'm hoping he can confirm soon. That if that's the case, then the gating issue comes down to the one that David owns.
Which one does Amit need to be handled?
The DHCP and IGMP flows should be provisioned only after successful radius authentication. And then there were two defects. One was fixes in ONOS DHCP2 relay app. And then there was one for AAA reset device.
So let me ask one question, right? So what is the damage when the DHCP and IGMP flow get created at the same time, almost like at the same time when the radius is? I know that's not the right sequence, but is there any negative effect?
Yeah, I think one thing which we see over here is, suppose if we configure the flows, then RG will get IP address and even the data starts flowing without authentication.
Okay. Okay,
so
that's right. That's not the right behavior. The authentication doesn't mean it become meaningless. But I thought. Do we have anybody from Siena here? Is Steve Crook's son?
Hey, Sean. I'll take action and update on all the three issues. What is the current state? So after this call, or early morning tomorrow.
Who was that?
That was
Yeah, this was done. Yeah.
From Radio Systems.
Santa. I guess the Ta doesn't pronounce, just Sant.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have someone taking an action item for that, for the issues that I noted that Amit owns, and then I think we still have this outstanding. And so we need to understand if this
is there a solution for making the sequence correct? Is there a proposed solution for making the sequence correct?
So the last.
I guess the based on last meeting, Amit or said that it's already there, but it depends on the code review and commit.
This was the one that David owns, and so
I think Saurabh was asking about the DHCP and IGMP, the 388, right?
Yeah, I guess they are independent apps. So as soon as they come up, basically they push, right? Their flows. So is there a? I was just curious, what is the solution for making sure it happens in sequence or any other kind of solution? Because we do similar things in a different application where yeah, every single app pushes its flows, but the authentication app basically also pushes a highest priority flow that blocks all other traffic but the EA poll traffic from that incoming port, so to speak. And only after authentication happens, it then unblocks that traffic. So all the other flows then become active. And that's when, you know, IGMP can work or DHCP can work and so on. So this blocking mechanism together with the AAA app is a solution that we're following in a separate solution for a separate use case. So I was just curious what you guys were doing, but looks like Amit is the one who knows, right? And he isn't here.
Yeah, maybe you could do the review the code and maybe take a look at what the solution is.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe part of this is someone can review if this was committed, but it sounds like Lance is going to give us an update on these, right?
Yeah, so I just looking 390, that code has been merged. So the Jira ticket has to be updated for that. And even 387, yeah, so 390 it's committed, it's merged, so Jira ticket has to be updated on that. And other two tickets I will take action and then get back to you.
Okay, so I've updated 390 to done, and then so we have 387 and
yeah. 388.
388. Okay, and
yeah.
then we still have 145.
Sure, I'll put in my list.
145 is Dave Bainbridge, right? It's Dave.
Yeah.
It's not you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, so too bad that 388 didn't pick up what Saurabh was doing from the other project. So so 388 we still need to take a look. Saurabh, I think what Yuan asked, can you take a look and see whether how their solution is doing?
I'm sorry, Sean, did you ask me to take a look?
Yeah, 388. That's a 388. You know, right now, the implementation and testing is done. Code is asked for review in Garrett, and user story can be closed as soon as review is approved.
Okay, I can take a look.
Okay, so if we assume David will be back Wednesday, what we can do is proceed with the support branch and then do an RC just to get the process going and assume that he'll be back Wednesday and can update us Thursday morning. And then if we get an update Thursday morning that it's in, we'll create the release. Does that work? So we'll proceed with the current plan of let's get a support branch created today. And then we'll go through RC tomorrow. And then we'll walk through the adapter list. So on the adapter side, so any updates on the ONU? This is the Broadcom ONU.
Yes, there's still some key issues we're working through on that. We're not getting the EA poll messages not coming through the ONU. So it seems to be receiving it, but it's not coming up on the flow towards the OLT like we expect to see. So we've had an issue open with Broadcom on this for a little over a week, and they're running into seems like the same things. They have some key people are on PTO, and but we're still working and trying to escalate and get some attention on that particular issue. And it seems to be it's blocking for us right now.
So a question on this issue has and we're at ONF, we are a little bit behind you where you are. We're still waiting for the correct ONU image from Broadcom for the B0 chip. But I was curious, does it make a difference if instead of the edge core OLT, you were using, say, Broadcom's reference OLT, with the SVK, and still using BAL on the SVK? Does that make a difference? Have you tried that, Kim?
No, we haven't tried that. We only had one of those SVK4 units, and we put all our investment into edge core units, and so the only one we have was not stable enough for us to use. So we just abandoned that and went right to edge core, where the support and the build environment, runtime environment was a lot better. So we haven't gone to that, but we're trying to get all these traffic profiles communicated to Broadcom so they can actually test that with their reference hardware. So that's a summary of where we are. Doesn't look like though this is anything related with hardware. It's Bell and Maple. It would be. It seems like it would be the same problem if we were using the Broadcom reference OLT.
I see. Okay.
Okay, so I think it's continue to monitor. And then process flow rules. Sorry?
Yes, I was just going to say we also picked up another issue just recently with BAL is trying to configure certain flows. BAL is returning an error on this, and we have also that issue is open with Broadcom to find out why BAL is not accepting a particular flow setup. And we haven't put a tracking JIRA in for this because it showed up fairly recently. We thought it might get resolved fast, but it looks like that one is going to take some time as well. So we'll put that in, put a tracking bug in there to track that issue. But that one is being a blocker as well because it won't accept the flows that we're trying to send to it for some reason. And that's with the new BAL, the new 2.4.3.6 BAL release. Yes.
Okay. And then this is the driver framework. So there was a meeting.
Yeah, 299. Yes. So there was some discussion of this over emails, and VOLTHA discussed in the last day and a half or so. So we're going through and trying to get that driver build to stand alone outside of the BAL SDK, and build purely from what was released from GitHub. As been reported for quite a while, we didn't wait for any of this stuff from Broadcom to come in. We continued to develop using the monolithic BAL build, but the Broadcom direction framework was to create this. They created a mechanism for a standalone BAL application. That's the model they wanted VOLTHA to use, and we've been tracking for that, and just recently now, just overnight, we've been going through and trying to do some review and cleanup in preparation for pushing that out to the community. So that's kind of overall status on this one right here. We're still working on it, still going. It looks like probably about another day, but we just have to make sure that there's everything is using the Broadcom approved API that's going to be showing up in the community distribution.
So you'll be done by Wednesday?
That's the target.
I think we'll have update on Wednesday. Whether that'll be done or not is to be determined.
Yeah, there's we have almost the entire focus of our developers are trying to get the vendors, and we know how important it is to get it out. So it's a high priority for us.
Okay, so I assume there will be an email update tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we can continue with the stories. Let's see if it doesn't look like anything else was done. So this is the one that we were concerned would be the gating issue. So any update on this one?
Yeah, I think let me give this update. Right now we are trying to use a single jump port on all the ether types, because once that is successful, then we can try these at all the variety of flow additions with respect to the ball. Because if the 252, if you look at it, the addition of the flow itself is failing. Once that is done, we can try these things, like having the same ether type on the different jump ports. So unless 252 is complete, we cannot take 3.304.
Okay, so we're essentially gated by the 3 issues we have up here, right? So has there been progress on anything else then?
Sorry?
So we're...
No, it's still, it's primarily blocked on that 352 issue, and that's one of the things I mentioned before is we have that a case open with Broadcom to try to figure out why we're having trouble with that, why BAL is not allowing us to get just even more basic, just the basic flows set up.
Yeah, I would say 299 is not a gating issue.
No, that 299 is the result of that is that the current progress of the driver is pushed out to GitHub, but that doesn't block this other stuff.
Well, it is listed as a gating issue for a bunch of things that have been tested, I believe, using the old kind of monolithic driver, right? But I think folks are waiting on this build framework to do some final testing. So there were some stories that were dependent on 299 to close out.
Right, in order to say that the work is complete and it's available to the community, yes.
Okay, so once we get an update tomorrow, and assuming that's done, a few of the stories should be closed out. And then we'll monitor this again on Thursday. But I don't think there's been any updates otherwise.
Right.
So one of the things that we probably want to talk about is contingency, right? Because I don't think this is going to be done by this Thursday. So I think so we had a discussion. So Sean, this is the contingency plan. I think the plan was to do a feature freeze on the 8th. So we assume that we have another week. So this is where we're going to eat into the first test cycle, right? So we assume testing starts on 9/11. And each test cycle has 2 OLTs. Our assumption is that we could look at the edge core adapter further into the test cycle. So one of the things we've been discussing is, could we push this out a bit? 31 isn't going to make it, right? So can we push this out a week to 9/8 and then cut the support branch and then give it another week to kind of harden and then release?
Are we talking about the adapter? Sorry, are you talking adapter or the VOLTHA 1.0?
Adapter. VOLTHA 1.0, we're going to go with the assumption we're releasing this Thursday.
Okay.
With the plan being to create a support branch today, and we'll go over that in a second because I'm trying to figure out who is going to do that. And then Wednesday we'll, tag for RC, and then Thursday we'll do a release, assuming that we get updates from all the stories that they're done. So on Thursday's call, if we can make sure that David and Amit are there so that we can close out all the stories, and Sarisha, so we can confirm that all of those are closed out, we can release Thursday. And so pending Thursday morning's call, we can make that determination.
Hey, Ian. I just joined. Sorry, late. But was there a question for me? I just heard my name. There was one story that you had asked for comments, but that's closed. It was closed last week. We just forgot to update the story to done. I just updated it right now.
Okay, so I think we're down to the 3 stories from, actually 2 now, I think, and then David's. So those are the ones we're waiting on then to make the call on Thursday to cut the release. But our assumption is that VOLTHA is going to go to proceed with that release date. I think at this point we need to figure out when the adapter is going to be able to release. Right, there's a lot of open issues, and what's not clear to me is when are they going to be closed. So we're saying, let's go to adapter. So 299, we're going to have an update tomorrow, and it's targeted for that, which would end up in a bunch of stories being closed out because they should be coded and mostly tested. It's just pending this to close out a few stories. I think there were maybe 3 or so. And then if we assume that, then we've got these other 2, right? So processing the flow rules. This was gating a few other ones. So if we assume, what is our best case scenario for when this would be resolved? And then for the ones that are dependent on it, like the one we had just talked about, which was 304, and supposedly will take a whole sprint. And if I assume the sprint is 2 to 3 weeks, then are we saying that we're still at least 2 to 3 weeks out for an adapter release?
Yeah, I think, see, here the problem is if everything works, maybe it works in 2 days, because it's all just flow addition with different values. If something doesn't work, then we have to go to Broadcom. Again, Broadcom has to replay. That's the thing which is going to take more time. That's why we have kept it as 2 weeks. So maybe what I'm saying,
if this new issue that we identified within the last day with valve requires a spin of valve, that could take a week.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just not exactly determined. This is a hard one to determine because don't know if on the Broadcom side we're still trying to get them all of the information that they need, and they need to get the right people, assembled to look at this. They have, like I mentioned, they had some PTO issues, so we're working it, and we have done internal escalations on our side to try to get attention to all these. So it's really hard to predict when it will break through. It could be a couple days, it could be a week, depending where the root of the problem is. So the only thing we can do, I think, at this point is just give constant updates on the progress, and we just track it.
Okay, Sean, is there anything you can help with here in terms of escalating the issue?
I think Frank is on vacation, right? So, but he said he can still be reached. So, Kim, have you tried to reach him?
He does seem to be. There is some response through Ching. He seems he delegated a guy to look on the OLT. Yeah, Ching on the OLT side, on the BAL side. But we have this also affects, the part of the problem is on the ONU side as well. That's where we have.
Right. Okay. He sort of warned that last week, right? But the flow issue, that's the OLU side, right? OLT side, right?
Right. Yes.
Yes.
So I think what I'm hearing is, worst case, we're potentially looking at another 3 weeks. And best case, if everything lines up, we could be looking at a week.
Well, based on Redis's track record, they always pull everything together the last week. No, don't. No. They were able to pull everything together by the deadline.
So now that Sean, now you've set us up.
No.
No, I didn't jinx it. No. That's.
Scott, did you have a comment?
No, not really. I mean, when when things are gated by Broadcom, it's always, like others have mentioned, it's a little tricky in terms of how much support you get and how quickly they fix bugs in their code. I've experienced the same thing in a different project as well. So it's very hard to put timelines when you're gated by bugs in Broadcom's code.
So I think,
Kim, do you think Ching will be able to handle that?
It's so far, all right. Experience has been the BAL side, through Frank and that side on the OLT side. The support has been, probably more than what could be expected. They are very responsive, and they seem to get to our issues right away. But now that this is a full path type of problem, the ONU side seems to be having some issue, and that's where we're not. We're trying to find the expert on their availability for that. So so it could be worked from both ends, and that's a little harder. We haven't dealt with those guys as much as we have on the BAL side.
So interestingly, yesterday I found out that the OLT and ONU are separate projects inside Broadcom. They're like different projects, programs, whatever you want to call them. They're completely separate. Yes. And I've been trying to get an ONU image for a week now, and the OLT people can't help me. The ONU people aren't responsive, and it's. So maybe, Sean, it would help if you can go higher and find the right ONU people and put some pressure on them to respond.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
I'm sending some email out right now. But I think Sam Chen was the key person. So if it seems like Frank last week didn't know who's helping him. But anyway, so Kim.
Sean, I'll follow up with you. We have the names. Sam Chen will be back on Monday. So, but between now and then, yeah, they prefer not to hand off to another engineer. So I'll follow up with you after this. We can give Broadcom a call if needed. Okay.
And then why don't you, the communication, if you can CC me on all the communication between Redis or whoever with Broadcom, I'll be fine. Okay.
This is Michelle here. Can you guys confirm that you're trying to use a non-RG load with the Broadcom ONU?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
That's the case. We match it. That was an issue for a while. We're using this so-called SFU image, and it was confirmed. It was confirmed by Iching that it was really the correct SFU load that's in there. So.
Okay.
So this is yeah, this is something, and a question for Sienna guys is I know you guys are using the Broadcom reference ONU. So are you testing with your own OLT, which is metal based, or edge core OLT?
We're testing with all of the above.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I think what I'm hearing is let's go ahead and monitor it for next week. Okay. And then for in the case of the edge core adapter, so with the ONU, there's also the TNW ONU. So any updates on that? Is an alternative option?
No, they were waiting for their image, which I think they've said will be out a week from next week, the 4th.
Okay, so we're still waiting on it. Okay, so let's monitor it for next week, and then let's or monitor Thursday, and then let's see where we're at in terms of the release for this. And then we'll move on to the next item in our list. Okay, so the support branch. Who is going to create the support branch? I think we'll go with our current plan of we'll create the support branch today, and I think part of it is just getting folks going with the process. So the plan today is 8/29, create support branch.
The question is, Kim, I thought you volunteered to do that, but do you?
Yes. Yeah, I was going to comment on that. So the mechanics of creating the support branch, are known, and and we know that VOLTHA module owners can do it. But over the weekend there was some discussion of primarily from David Bainbridge that might not be enough. There was talk of a tracking API for VOLTHA to keep track of, and there's was versioning of individual Docker components and things like that. And it started getting a little bit beyond the scope of what I was prepared to do. But, making this branch is one thing, but I don't know if there needs to be more discussion on David's points, which seem to be, pretty valid. So what did you think about that, David's points?
I'm wondering what David's point, whether that would, you know, whether Andy can help. I mean, what I'm saying, would Andy understand what David's feedback is about? I canceled that call because, you know, because I don't know whether I didn't get a response on Andy that he could attend last week, right? So let me review David's response again, and then eventually I think all the people right now has the commit right can cut the branch, right?
Yeah, VOLTHA module owners, anybody with the ability to +2 the and merge the code will be able to create a branch. I created a test branch out there last week just to see if I could do it, and there's something out there called VOLTHA 1.0, you know, test only. That branch is created now to actually, you know, put in the strategy and an official naming, and then getting, you know, controlling, you know, what changes go in, you know, to VOLTHA master, and then what actually end up on that branch is going to take, you know, some community discussion to make sure everybody is, you know, is committing to the right place if things need to go into the release. So my volunteering was for creating the branch and some documentation around, you know, the branching philosophy, but not necessarily all of the points that David has brought up. So Sean, I think you need to review that and find out, you know, do we need to be more extensive on, you know, and address David's points, or do we just, you know, make a VOLTHA 1.0 branch so we have something that is tagged and locked down, and then master can continue, and there we go.
Why don't we do that? And then at the meantime, so create a branch, and then if we encounter problem, then we'll try to address that. But let's go ahead and do that. I think right now, without David so, you know, intimately involved with the project, without him around, I think it's hard to understand exactly what are the issues. So cut a branch, wait until he comes back, and then review the branch and see whether there's issue or not.
Yeah, and I think what my proposal will be is just to create a branch that's named VOLTHA 1.0 RC1 release candidate, you know, and then save that seems, or the tag would be RC1, but there would be a VOLTHA 1.0 branch that would have isolated any isolated changes. So Garrett would have to commit directly to, you know, those changes to the branch. It would have to be cherry picked over there, you know, and I think we can work that out as we decide what needs to end up on that branch.
Well, one of the issues that we might have with the release branch is in some of the versioning of how we do our Docker files, and also the pip install of Python packages. A lot of our Docker files pull the latest, and so as time goes on, since we don't actually create a release artifact, but we just have sort of a build tree, you can build 2 months from now VOLTHA 1.0, and it's not going to be the same software.
Yeah, well, that's yes, Chip, that's a real good point, and I think, you know, even Sergio was, you know, had some comments on that, you know, a while back on how to make sure that the you know, that versioning is the same. But, you know, what we're talking about here is just on the VOLTHA repo itself, getting a branch and a tag. But what things happen when you go to build a VOLTHA from a branch? That's I think that's the essence of what David was getting to.
Okay.
And there is no time to deal with that, I think, you know, in the next day or two. I mean, just David has to get involved in the discussion, and we have to, I mentioned, we have to pick up stories, and somebody's going to have to take stories to go through those specific issues.
So I think the main thing is we also will have to go through this process for the adapter, right? They're in the same repo. So my assumption is let's do best effort for what we can do by 8/31. So let's try to do a version 1.0.0 by the 31st. And then as we work on 1.1 for the adapter, we can clean up this process. Does that work?
Yeah, I think so. The adapter for EdgeCore, it's in two places. The adapter proper is in the normal VOLTHA repo, and then the driver side that goes in the OLT is in a different repo. So there just has to be a strategy to match the branches between those. But that's something new that has to be done. So, and I don't think we need to worry about it right now. We need to worry about getting some releasable code in there first, and then we'll take the EdgeCore adapter strategy because it's just a little bit different. We'll work through that. When it gets closer to cutting a release of it.
Okay. So let's proceed with this plan, and then the final thing we need to discuss is Chip wanted to talk about Vol 400. So let me pull that up. So Chip?
Yeah, I've been working on our XPON interface, and for the Atran OLT adapter, we have some restrictions on the selection of the allocation ID as well as the GEM port ID ranges. And so I ran across that, and currently those are created in the channel group as an index pool. And so it starts assigning them from the first available one. The XPON handler does, and that might not necessarily work on our hardware. And in just some discussions last Wednesday in the EdgeCore meeting, I guess there is also, I believe there's a GEM port ID restriction as well for the EdgeCore adapter. And I also noticed back in around June 6th or so, there was some discussion that I think JC from Tibet raised and one other person raised. And I just wanted to see if we could come to a consensus or an idea of could we make these read-write, and would that work or solve most people's issues if they do have issues? Or is this an Atran only issue?
It's Raghu here. Just give a little brief on the EdgeCore. The only restriction in the EdgeCore right now we have on the range of the jump port ID is what we are using, because I think in the XPON handler the range is from 1021 to 65,535, but the BAL only restrict from 1024 to 9218. That is the only restriction. Apart from that, the BAL provides the flexibility in configuring the jump port using the XPON. That's not an issue, but only the range is an issue.
Okay.
Right. Just the range, but you can the API can freely assign those. So I don't think it's as restrictive as what you're mentioning, Chip. So.
So hey, this is Suresh. Did you have something else to add?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
And just one before that, before you
sure.
I think jump port ID, it is actually assigned from 1021. Is it okay if we assign it from 1024? Is it any reason it is started from 1021?
Because the standard says so.
Okay.
That's the simplest answer.
Okay.
Yeah, the standard. I can give you reference to the standard as well, and sure, we could change. I think what you all are asking for is workarounds right now, and that's the first thing that I mentioned, that this is not a bug. Just because there are limitations in the adapters doesn't mean there's a bug. So what you're looking for is workaround for POC3, and I wanted to generally ask the community, what should we do if there are some restrictions with the adapters like this? Because we're talking about mixing and matching OLTs and ONUs, and I'm sure that if one ONU has some restriction and OLT has a restriction, we have to find out the common denominator between both of them. The restrictions even grow more, right? So this is a question to generally ask within the community, how we deal with such restrictions in general, because this is probably the first thing that came up, but there may be others that come up as well in this particular case, right? So we could change the allocation. I mean, it's no big deal. We could change it to 1024, but of course we're not going to be completely adhering to the standard. But then I just wanted to understand what, I mean, we can't just make it because there's a restriction in one of the hardware. We have to make sure that the community agrees with such change. So that's why it would be good to find out what everybody wants, because I'm sure that each one of your hardware is going to have different restrictions. So, and we're not even considering ONUs. So what does the ONU want? And
yeah, I mean, even the standards have. Yeah, even the standards have different ranges, right? I mean, GPON is different from NGPON 2. So, I mean,
right.
Would we have a specific OLT adapter implementation that supports a certain range because it's ADTRAN or because it's
we could, like, that's what I'm saying. We discussed about having a module within VOLTHA that does capability learning from the devices and then can do some adaptive, changes based on that. If the capabilities are available for somebody who's allocating this, then it could look at the common denominator and allocate based on that, because it all comes to how you're managing this whole thing, right? Right now, what we are looking at for VOLTHA 1.0 is XGS-PON, so we put in the numbers as per XGS-PON standard, but yes, and it was also done in a way that it could be extended to NG-PON 2 later, and that's why the ID pools are in the channel group. And there may be changes in that because, like the Yang models are evolving and the standards, what we have in the standard is what is implemented right now. If you want to change with that, we can't just be changing just because one of the hardware isn't working. We need to make sure that all of us get together and understand what needs to be done. And we did that 2 months ago, and the proposal has been there for the last 2 months. And I'm surprised that this is being requested 2 days before the close of the stream.
Yeah, so Sarisha, sorry, this is Paul Gray. First, I apologize. I had sent an email to Donna mid to late June, saying that this needed further discussion, and I think it fell on the floor. And I apologize that it's coming up late. I'm unaware. I was not as familiar with the VOLTHA process. I thought this was still a proposal. When I look at this from a high level, architecturally, to me, the adapters are the HAL layer, right? That's the hardware abstraction. The OLT and ONU registration takes place before VOLTHA is involved. All of these, ALEC IDs, TCONs, everything we're talking about is already gem ports. Everything's already allocated and in place prior to VOLTHA. One of the things that, I don't think from an architectural perspective, I think it would be good if the adapters were responsible. And that way they just report upwards, right, what's being used. I don't see a reason for the OLT and the ONU registration to take place, have everything in place, and then for VOLTHA to come along and change an ID. I don't see a reason for that.
I think it's already a little different from what I guess I heard from what is involved at 400, where it's being asked to be configurable. So there are already two different suggestions here, and so we need to come to a common ground. That's what I'm saying. Let's discuss. Okay. But
yeah, actually, my suggestion in the long run was sort of what Paul was talking about, but because of time and the need to get multiple people who do OLTs in consensus with it, that if we did do or we allowed it to be assigned, then that would be at least a workaround that wouldn't block any people's POC3 efforts. And in VOLTHA 1.1 or VOLTHA 2.0 or whatever, we can, as the models evolve and our knowledge evolves, we can come up with something better.
Well, yeah, and it's not just us. I mean, there's a wider community than this, because there was a reason we based it off of WT385, and the reason for that, there's been lots of discussions happening over there too. So, and it's basically following the model over there. And if there's changes in the model, we'll adapt to that. I'm not saying no, but The idea right now is if you're going to work around something for POC3, should each vendor work around what they need, or should we need to go change the core right now? Because I don't know. I mean, I just heard that probably from 3 hardware vendors right now that they have 3 different mechanisms. So what about the others? We don't want to do something and then make sure that some other hardware doesn't work, right? So I just want to know, do we have all those limitations and restrictions listed that we could actually look for a solution that will work with all?
I don't think we should list restrictions, and I don't think that's that's a product type thing, and I don't think we should impose anything in the future, right? If you look at other standards, they don't do it, necessarily in this nature. I think the adapter is the place where the hardware abstraction takes place. And I think we should tie it to there in the long term. In the short term, I think CHIP's workaround works, right? It allows the adapter to, reassign it. In the future.
Yeah, but what you're saying, Paul, works. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at WT352. What you're saying works if you're just working in a, single pawn, single XGS pawn or GPON mode. But when you look at TWDM, then you can't just, assume it to be just an adapter level. It becomes much more. What we allocate, for example, these gem and alloc IDs are a little higher. They need to be common across adapters, and these adapters could be multi-vendor. They don't have to be single vendor. And the standard, in fact, talks about that. So it's not maybe.
Yeah, but that still needs to accommodate the different capabilities of the different OLTs, right? I mean, there's a protocol that allows you to negotiate which alloc ID and gemport and ONU ID that is used, right?
Sure. I mean, that would be, if there is something that's defined, we could use it. But what I'm saying is it's not something that we should completely leave it up to the adapters, because we still need to have something in place to find that lowest common denominator.
So we're at the end of the hour. I guess the question I have is, how do we resolve this? Right? It feels.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for too. How do we want to resolve it right now? Because I'm not sure what is suggested by. Sorry, Chip, it will work for everyone or not. So
yeah. Could Chip summarize what the suggestion is?
The suggestion, it's I can even put up a code review. It's about a 24-line change. So the suggestion is that in either the REST request or at the CLI, if the alloc ID or gemport ID is not specified, it uses the existing method. And if the user in either the REST or the CLI specifically set requests an alloc ID or gem ID, and that has not been assigned, then that one is used. And I've actually tested it. This works quite fine. So, and as I mentioned, it's probably less than 24 lines, and the actual code in XPON handler is about 4 lines of code. Or 4.
Chip, you don't have to share the information, but are you guys outside the range of the 1021 to?
Oh, no, we're all within the range.
Okay.
So it's not, these aren't any non-standard values. It just happens to be how best to select gemport IDs and do both shaping and traffic management in the Qumran, between the Qumran and the FPGA, as well as optimizations for dynamic bandwidth allocation algorithms.
So let's say because right now, so basically your proposal is at least for your hardware, you're going to use the CLI to override whatever is going to be assigned.
Yeah, or the rest. Yeah, we specify it up front. So, and if you don't specify up front, you get the exact existing behavior.
Right. I know the Broadcom, the lowest range is 1024. So since we don't have that many ONU Surisha, will the next available mechanism will pick the 1021 for the first ONU always?
Yeah, that's how it works. It's the way that the index pool is built off the bitmap. So.
Right. I mean, the index pool uses a bitmap because it just optimizes it so that we don't.
But what are you guys? Even though you're not involved with the phase 3, maybe the more minimum common denominator. Let's talk about. Maybe that's something we need to do address in the next release. Srisha, since everybody is having used the Broadcom Edge Core, and we know for Broadcom to change may take some time, can we set the lowest numbers in 1024?
By the way, it's not a Broadcom problem. Just wanted to be sure it's not a Broadcom problem.
No, but range is starting.
I want to be sure if that would work. I don't have a problem in making them read write. We could do that. I mean, I didn't have to add all that code before, but the question that I'm raising here, I want to know an answer is, would that be okay for everyone right now?
What I'd like to propose is that I think Chip's workaround is a good one. I think that's, what I'd like to see in place. The only comment I have, Chip, is that 0, I believe, is a valid ALEC ID, so you might want to use all Fs.
Well, we are only talking about the data ALEC IDs here and not the OMCI ALEC IDs. So
okay,
the OMCI ALEC IDs are automatically picked based on the ONU ID, so it shouldn't matter.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have a path forward, or is further discussion needed and a separate meeting to be scheduled?
Let's try to again. So using Chip's solution, then even with Edge Core, if we can still just use the CLI and the rest to select it, right?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna change it, I could change the range to 124. It's not a big deal for me. It's okay. What I'm trying to make sure is the solution gonna work for everybody? Then we can make that change, and we can use this workaround for POC 3, but it's still a workaround. Yeah. And then we can come back and see.
I think, yeah, it seems like you need an option to allow the OLT to select its own values, right? I mean, because it may not just be it's not a range issue. It may just be a set of values within a range, or they may need to be contiguous. There may be other specific implementation issues, right? So you need the option of allowing the OLT to select the values it wants to use as an option.
Right, but you'd also have to interop with other ONUs. So
it does, and there's the ICTP protocol for NGPON 2 that in theory allows you to negotiate which values to use for a service.
But Sean, I just wondering whether putting that mechanism in the VOLTA, I don't think we have time to put that mechanism in, right? So is that the future?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not suggesting we add ICTP to VOLTA right away, but I think if we just allow the OLT to have an option of selecting which values they want to use.
I think that's we will list it as the next release features, right? So
well, I guess again we have to look at what the standard is there, because even in the case of 352, the recommendation is that the IDs be allocated from the mobility manager and not necessarily using ICTP.
So how do you close on this issue?
So is this okay? Whatever workaround is suggested in 400, is that Vol 400, is that okay for all the vendors?
Yeah,
I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, I think we need to go with a short-term solution to get us by now, and maybe create a bug or a story for tracking for next release, right? To proper fix this.
Correct.
I would suggest that not to create a bug and create a story, because this is something that
whichever work.
I mean, we don't want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because this is something we need to discuss much ahead and not a couple of days before closing the stream.
Yeah, totally. And potentially, do we need to maybe go back to broadband forum or something like that for them to address?
Well, I think so. I think that's also one of the disconnects that I see here. I think we need to basically look at what is being proposed in the broadband forum, and there's been changes too, right? I mean, these are evolving standards. I'm sure there'll be changes. We'll have to adapt to it. So
because we wanted to be able to support NGPON 2, right, or whatever coming up. Also,
it's already it is because of NGPON 2 that these IDs are unique across the channel group range. I think it's what we are talking about is how do we take into account the device's capabilities and honor that. That's the discussion here.
Okay.
Okay, so I noted that the team agreed to go with Chip's proposal, but long term there would be a story to address this. And then in terms of next steps, we'll follow up Thursday. There were a bunch of adapter things that are open, so we'll follow up. And then tomorrow's meeting is canceled.
So again, one question I had for Chip, is that a patch set? I know that you put in the Python code in the Jira. Is that a patch set, or you just, is that something that you want us to look at?
That was a quick one. What I can do right now is I can change this from a bug and I guess just change it to a task. And I can probably get a Garrett review put up, and I'll try to include several people's names. I'll send out.
You can also change the range to 1024. I mean,
yeah, let's do that.
Say, for example, if Broadcom or if Edgecore doesn't want to manually configure it, they could still. I mean, for now, anyway, this is a workaround, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I'll go. Yeah, I'll go ahead and change the gem ID base to 1024. I've got the code up right now. The alloc ID actually starts at 1024 as well. But
alloc ID starts from 1024. Gem starts from 1021, but you can change it to 1024, so it doesn't.
Yeah, and I'll put that up for a Garrett review. I'll send out to VOLTHA to discuss the number, and we can hold off a couple days and just give plenty of people time to review or add their names to it. So just no one check it in until we all feel happy with it.
Support branch is getting created, so if you want this in VOLTHA, it should get merged to support branch.
Okay.
Yeah, review that before tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, I'll have it up within 30 minutes, and I'll leave it up for someone else to +2.
Okay, thanks everyone. Okay. And then just to note, tomorrow's meeting is canceled. We'll meet again on Thursday. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh.